I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, August 10th, 2021. This is a Prescott City Council voting meeting. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully you got in here without getting too wet, rowing your canoe in here. Councilman Sishko will be here eventually. He had to change his shirt, apparently, because he was running around downtown. So he'll be back shortly. Today we have an invocation from Pastor John Filkey with Canyon Bible Church, and Mayor Pro Tem will lead us in the pledge. Is Pastor here? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Let's pray. Dear all-wise and loving Father, on behalf of all gathered here today and the people of Prescott, I want to say thank you for your kindness and your abundant blessings to us. Thank you for life itself and for the measure of health we need to fulfill the calling you have placed upon each of us, for the sustenance you provide and the gift of friendship. Thank you for the forgiveness of sin available through Jesus Christ, the beauty of your gospel and all its promises. Thank you for the ability to be involved in this useful and necessary work, and for the honor of bearing the responsibilities you have given to each one of us. In the scriptures, you direct us as citizens to obey our governing authorities, since you have established those in authority to lead by example in promoting peace and order and justice. Therefore, Lord, I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of our city officials, and for the assembled council. I ask that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid conflicting interests and issues of our day, a sense of the welfare and true needs of the people of Prescott, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, confidence in what is good and what is fitting, the ability to work together in harmony when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their calling. Finally, Lord, I pray for the agenda set before them this afternoon. Please give each of them assurance of what would please you most and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Prescott. And it is in Christ Jesus, our Lord's name, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Now let's please call roll.
Mayor Mangarelli.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Scholl.
Here.
Councilman Blair.
Yes.
Councilman Good.
Present.
Councilmember Rusing.
Here.
Councilman Tenney.
Here.
And Councilman Sishko will arrive when he's
Very good.
got a new shirt.
All right. Thank you. Let's move on to presentations, please.
Prescott Meals on Wheels update on community outreach.
Good afternoon. My name is David Marston. I'm a volunteer with Prescott Meals on Wheels, and I do appreciate this opportunity to address you today, talk a little bit about Prescott Meals on Wheels, and also hopefully give some vital information to the community. First, I want to thank you, the city, for the support that you've given us with the facility. We're part of the community center on Rosser, and since it opened in 2007, it's been an excellent base for our operations. Prescott Meals on Wheels has been serving Prescott since 1973, and during those 48 years, we've served approximately 3 million meals. Last year, it amounted to 72,000 meals and plus, to both the home delivered and to those who came to our dining room. Beginning in the year 2018, we added Prescott Valley to our service area. So now we're covering something like 350 square miles, and today serving about 300 meals a day. We are not able to do that at all if it were not for the dedicated staff of 9 that we have, the 200 plus volunteers, and also the generous financial assistance provided by the community at large. As you can imagine, the last 18 months have been most challenging for us and everybody else. But I'm happy to report that we have been able to maintain our service, helping those that need it. And we've done so in a manner that was safe for not only the people doing the serving, us, but also our clients. Now I'd like to take an opportunity to dispel some myths about Meals on Wheels. The first is that we serve only the very old. The fact is, all adults 18 and older can be eligible. And all people in the community are welcome in our dining room. The second is that the food we serve is institutional at best. In fact, we take a certain amount of pride in both the quality and the variety of the meals that we serve, both to our homebound and congregate diners. A third misconception is that only the poor are eligible. The fact is that the criteria for our homebound delivery has no financial element. Rather, we concentrate on the person's ability to procure food or their ability to prepare food. And then the last is that it's only about the food. Our motto is, it's more than a meal. Yes, a good, nutritious meal is critical. But in addition to that, we provide a bit of interpersonal contact, very vital, as well as a basic wellness check. And I'm appearing today as part of Prescott Meals on Wheels outreach to the community to identify those in the community that may need our service but are not currently taking it. And that may be because they don't know about it, they don't know if they're eligible, or they're not sure how to start the process. And we just encourage anyone who has a question, please give us a call, and I'll give the number. It's area 928-445-7630. That's 928-445-7630. Prescott Meals on Wheels has the capacity and the commitment to serve all who qualify. You may have received the brochure. I think it was passed out. The face says what the message is. Would you or someone you know benefit from Prescott Meals on Wheels? That may be yourself, a friend, a neighbor, a relative, whatever. Please let us help make life a little better for others. And that's all I have other than to thank you for this opportunity. I invite you all to visit, take a tour, have lunch, and if so inclined, please arrange for a ride-along. We'd love to have you see what we do. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Any questions from the council?
I just appreciate your service, and I have taken advantage of your invitation in the past and done a ride-along, and it's really substantial, not only providing those meals, but having that human connection for some people that are individually homebound. So it's a laudable program, and I wish you continued success.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for being here today and for presenting. Appreciate it. Let's move on to 6B, please.
Presentation from Arizona Association of Chiefs of Police, Award of Accreditation for the Prescott Police Department.
Hello, Amy Bonney. Nice to see you. I'm very excited to be here today to introduce two really wonderful people who are going to tell you a little bit about our accreditation process that we went through recently and present you with our accreditation. So Chief Jessup, Where'd you go? You're hiding behind me.
Right behind you.
Okay. With the San Luis Police Department and Deputy Chief Freed with the Kingman Police Department. And I will turn it over to you, Chief, and start the PowerPoint for you.
Thank you. It's a privilege to stand here, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city manager. I had the chance to meet some of you when we were up here. And so this presentation, I hope, will be as effective for you down the road as it was for the process that your department went through. I stand before my council all the time. My name is Richard Jessup. I am the chief of police down in San Luis. You have unique situations down there because we're right on the border. So it's nice to know to get up a little bit of a break to enjoy the rain, since we don't seem to get any anytime soon. But we'll bring our kayaks next time we come as well to do that. We're going to give a presentation, but I'd like for Deputy Chief Freed, who also assisted me on this particular project, to come and say just a couple words.
Thank you. Mayor, council people, city manager, I'm humbled to stand before you today. On June 15th and 16th of this year, we were welcomed to the city of Prescott with open arms. And basically, we came here to confirm what you already knew as unbiased parties, that you have an exceptional police department. From Chief Bonnie, her command staff, all of the officers, and the civilian staff, second to none. It was an exceptional experience. The elite process, the accreditation process, is not easy. There's 174 standards that you have to abide by and show proof that your agency is doing that. And Chief Jessup has done many of these, and it was the easiest one he's ever done. That's a credit to Chief Bonnie and her staff. But it's also a credit to the city of Prescott, because you have an exceptional police department. And I want to congratulate you today for the accreditation award that you're about to receive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. As he was saying, this was an incredible process that each department goes through. And give you a little bit of history of the ALEAP process. Was in 2017. As you know, law enforcement needle has moved quite a bit over the last few years. And so what happened in 2017 was the Leagues of Towns and Cities, the ACOP board, the Arizona Post, and the risk pool management all coupled together and said, how can we go about being accredited by the state, since we seem to think that Washington was going to allow that to happen. And there are many advantages to accreditation now. And I'll get into that in just a little bit. But I had the privilege of doing the very first accreditation for the University of Arizona about 2.5 years ago. And I'm here to tell you that Chief Bonnie and her staff, and Stacy Olson, who is here as well as the project manager, in the ones that I have done, I've not seen anything like this, especially with the speed that they were capable of doing this. My department became the 9th department in the state. Deputy Chief's department became the 2nd in the state to receive accreditation. And it's not an easy process. And it took us much more than that. It took us about 2 years, which was the time frame that we give most departments. But Chief Bonnie and her staff did this in less than a year. That is remarkable. And so some of the things that we've done is we've given you a little PowerPoint presentation that you can view on your screens. And I'm just going to go ahead and touch on a few things as we advance these slides. You know that professionalism is the standard now across this country. And we know that it happens and touches every life of the community, that they require us to be answerable for the things that we do. It was one of the things that I can remember about this was, as I looked in there, my department gets complaints. I have internal affairs and quality assurance, and they look at all the complaints from citizens, yet this department had none. That is incredible when you look at those types of things and how you investigate those types of things. So the standards and policies that this department has put forth, you should be very proud of. Their standards were right on the money. There are things that did not need to be redone. Whenever we needed something to be uploaded to it, Stacy was throwing it right on up there as the program manager, and it made our job very easy. Usually on an on-site visit when we come, we look at everything. We toured the entire city. We rode with the officers. We interviewed command staff. We talked to the city manager very briefly. I know schedules are busy. We talk to the community when we go to dinner. We find out what they think as well. And we could not find one that talked negative about this department.
Some of the benefits of accreditation, and it's not on this particular slide, but obviously public confidence, perspective, knowledge, self-assessment, those are things that we do. But let me tell you where this is really going to afford the police department a great advantage over others. If the Department of Justice from Washington, D.C. has their way, you will need to be accredited by a state bodying company or entity in order to even apply for federal or state grants. And so this puts the Prescott Police Department way ahead of the curve when it comes to those types of things. And so now they have put themselves in a position that if any state grants or federal grants come down the pipeline, they have got their accreditation. You must be either accredited or in the process of accreditation as well. If I get the next slide as well. As I mentioned, there are 175 different standards that each police department must go ahead and fulfill. And the Prescott Police Department fulfilled all 175. I think there were only 2 exemptions that were given in this particular case for a total of 173, simply because those 2 did not need to be looked at because you didn't have it. So there wasn't a thing to do when it came to those types of things. I will tell you that I also serve as the first vice president of the ACOP Executive Board, and I'm also a commission member for ALEAP as well. And like I said, I get to see everybody's, and Prescott PD's was absolutely stellar when it came to that. This is the process, and I threw this one up so that you understand, you have knowledge of what the police department really goes to. And as I said, it really takes up to those months. So you have an initial application fee, and the goal of ALEAP was to actually make it very easy for police departments to apply. It's not expensive. And so in 4 years now that this accreditation is going to be presented to you and the police department, you have 4 years now, and each year there's going to be certain standards that they're going to go through, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. So you see you have an application fee, a self-assessment phase, where the police department looks internally, sees everything that they need to have from all of the standards, and tries to meet all of those standards. This is done through PowerPoint, okay, and also from Power DMS. And so we try to get all of the existing proofs in there as well. I will say that the 2 assessors that came before us in the mock assessments made our job very easy as well. And what they asked for, Stacy as the program manager was able to upload everything that we needed, so that when Deputy Chief and I got here for our 2-day visit, all we had to do was literally go in and click, look at it, verify it, and sign off on it. Once that's done and the on-site assessment is due, then we write I believe it was 18 pages that we wrote for the commission to look at. I sit on that commission, and when I saw it, I am proud to put our names on that piece of paper for accreditation. Once that's done, it's reviewed. The commission votes on it. Then it comes to us as an ACOP board. We vote on it as well. You need to know that it was 100% unanimous to allow Prescott PD to receive their accreditation. And then now they've got 4 years, of which they'll be uploading some annual reports as well. This is the last slide, kind of gives you just an idea of the time frame that it took them again. And again, the application was July 15th of 2020. And look at the very end one, ALEAP accreditation by July 14th, less than a year. And that, again, is to be accredited to the leadership that Chief Bonnie had, her staff, Stacy as a manager, absolute incredible. I think that Deputy Chief and I take away from this when we came up here. We came up to do an assessment. We came away being family. And that's one of the things that Prescott PD impressed us so much about, was we have really become family, so much so that I am now the godfather. And this is now my son, and I've got a daughter over here now. And we did, but it really speaks highly of what this department was able to do. So, Mayor, if I could have you and the city manager come up at this particular time, I'll have Chief Bonnie come up as well. On behalf of the ACOP board and on behalf of the ALEAP Commission, we would like to congratulate you with this certificate of accreditation for the Prescott Police Department.
She's gonna make you look. She's gonna make you look good, Lamar.
Got it? All right. Thank you, guys.
you offered. No, it's just. I do just want to really thank the staff that we have here today and every member of our department who really pitched in and made this happen. It only happened so quickly because we did have all of our ducks in a row, and just so incredibly proud of our people and the city as well. And every other department head got us exactly what we needed when we needed it, and just gave us an opportunity really to showcase the hard work that the men and women do every single day. So thank you for your support, for your encouragement along the way. And Michael was, hard charging behind us as well, and we genuinely appreciate the work that went into it. So now we'll start all over and do it again. So thank you very much.
All right. Let's move on to consent agenda. Is there anything any members would like to pull off of the consent agenda? And welcome, Councilman. You look dry, so that's good.
Yeah, if somebody says to me, "You're all wet," I'll know what they mean.
Any member want to pull anything? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve consent agenda items 7A through 7J.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Please vote. Councilmember Roosing. Councilmember Roosing, can you hear me? That was a yes?
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 8A, please.
Approval of city contract number 2022-022 with Lifeline Ambulance Services, Inc. for contracted ambulance services.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members, council. As the late, great Yogi Berra used to say, this is kind of like deja vu all over again. No other way to kind of recapture this, but as those of you that were at the dais back in December of this year, we worked to approve a contract. The regulatory authority, in this case, Arizona Department of Health Services, took exception with a couple of minor administrative items, but the substantive change that they had voiced their concern with in the contract itself dealt with the indemnification between the two parties. Matt and myself worked together. We rewrote that language, and that is the substantive change from what I brought forth back in December. But I did, since there were some changes, I did feel it apropos to bring it back before you in case there were any further on questions. With that, I also have Representative Pete Como from Lifeline Ambulance here today with us. But between the two of us, I think we sincerely believe this is the right thing to do for this community. It's a short enough term that if things don't work out, we have an opportunity to adjust on the fly or look at other opportunities as they present themselves. So with that, I'd answer any questions that you may have.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. Questions, comments from the council? Councilman Good?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Chief. I know that we've been working through the agreements with Lifeline to make sure that we had valuable and appropriate response times throughout our community. And I know that we will continue to look at those areas as we grow as a community and as we add more density in some areas so that we can assure the public that emergency response is consistent and every part of our community is entitled to have that response for safety, police, fire, and of course ambulance emergency services as well. So thank you for working on this. I know it's been kind of a long road, but I think we're at a point where we've got an agreement now that'll be very beneficial for the community at large. So thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Councilman Good.
Councilman Sischka.
Yeah, congratulations on that agreement, Chief. I know that it was hard fought.
2 years.
Yeah.
2 years.
That's right.
So you probably didn't get the response time you wanted, but you got a good one. What would that be?
Well, I actually think for our community and given our topography, I think, at the 9-minute mark for 90% of the time, 10 minutes in totality, when you take into account a minute for call processing, a minute for reflex time, get to the vehicle and those kind of things. I think it's reasonable and prudent for our community. And the only way you can really improve service is added resources. And it's a measured and it's a balanced approach. There's a bottom line that Lifeline needs to meet. There's a bottom line that the city needs to meet. And through our cooperation, I think, and some adjustments along the way as to how the calls are processed, so we don't burden the ambulance company with a call that's not going to require an ambulance transport, which will become key as we deploy the 40-hour unit here October 1st. So with that, I think it is a balance, and I think it's reasonable and acceptable for our community to have the response standards as it's outlined here. I would love to have a 6 minute or less 90% of the time, but to accomplish that, given our topography, boy, that would take a lot more resources than is fiscally prudent to manage.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
Any other questions, comments from the council? Public comment?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2022-022.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Please vote. Councilmember Wissing?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Members,
Chief. Let's move on to item B, please.
Presentation and discussion regarding options for sponsorship contribution for Arizona's Christmas City campaign for fiscal year 22.
Great. Good afternoon again, Mayor, Council, and Steward, Economic Development and Tourism. The item before you today is just for discussion. Sherry Heine and MJ Smith are here today, and they will be giving you the presentation. It is for sponsorship options for Arizona's Christmas City events and activities. But I did want to provide some background before they come up here. So as you're aware, all of the Christmas City events are put on by varying and different organizations. They're all put on separately. So for example, the Prescott Downtown Partnership does the Nightlight Parade. Prescott Chamber of Commerce does the Day Parade and the courthouse lighting with assistance from the Downtown Partnership. M&M Entertainment does the Boot Drop and Enchanted Christmas, and the Acker Committee does Acker Night. So besides the support that these events and activities get from the Bed Tax Fund, the majority of the funding comes from local business, sponsorships and private funds. So early on in the budget process, the tourism office and the city manager had agreed that we should allocate more funds for the Christmas City events and the activities. And so it was decided that a one-time allocation of $95,000 for these events would go to sponsor those dollars for the fiscal year of 2022. And it was added to the tourism office's budget. Also, simultaneously, for the first time ever, which I think is just amazing, all the organizers of these Christmas City events and activities came together, and they decided that, you know what, we want to do this. We want to do this together. We want to be Arizona's Christmas City. We want to work together. We want to coordinate together. We want to plan. We want to market. We want to fundraise together. And so that was going on simultaneously with this. So on June 16th, they, and I'm referring to them as the Christmas City organizers right now because it's so many of them in our community who do this. On June 16th, these representatives came to the Tourism Advisory Committee, and during the presentation, TAC learned that the total cost actually for all these events and activities is actually $160,000. Therefore, TAC, the Tourism Advisory Committee, is recommending a total allocation of $160,000. Again, this is a one-time allocation, and it is not for new or expanded Christmas City events. So I am going to turn it over to Sherry Heine, who is President and CEO of the Prescott Chamber of Commerce, and MJ Smith, Executive Director of the Prescott Downtown Partnership, to tell you more about this. And just to remind you that the action for you today, there's no action. It's just for you, for future direction and communication as we move forward to decide about either a $95,000 or $160,000.
Thank you, Ann. You're welcome. Thank you for that. And thank you, Mayor and council members. And also, I know there's members of our committee and the TAC group here. And we are really here to help educate and let everyone understand how important this whole Arizona's Christmas City is for our community, the economic impact that it has. And I think it's really important, and Ann articulated it so well, is how we're all wanting to work together now. And MJ and I are going to tag team on the conversation.
So thank you so much for allowing us some of your time today. You know, when I first started with PDP, one of the very first conversations that Sherry and I had was, how do we do this in a way that makes more sense fiscally and with our resources? Because as Ann mentioned, the majority of our fundraising for these very, very important events comes from volunteers and going out to our local businesses for sponsorships. So Sherry and I sat down and we were having a discussion about this, and it came up, you know, it was really brought clearly to our attention last year with COVID and business closures, and how often my group or Sherry's group or the ACR committee were approaching the same businesses seeking funding for this group of events, who until our conversations really started were seen very separately, even though collectively it's what creates Arizona's Christmas City, right? It's this plethora of stuff that we have going on from Thanksgiving all the way through to Martin Luther King weekend when we take the lights down. And we felt like going out, you know, from the chamber, from PDP, from ACR committee, we weren't being fair to our businesses, and we weren't using our funding to the best of the ability. So that's kind of where these conversations started, with us working together collectively, because we saw that if we are able to pool these funds for all of these different events, and we mark it as a calendar of events rather than individually, we can extend that message much broader, and we can use our funds a little more responsibly.
Thank you. So a little bit, so as we were sitting down, we were comparing our budgets and what it cost. This is just the cost to host all of these events. So the total is $160,000. In each one of these budget items that you see, like the courthouse lighting, it's $100,000. Whiskey Row, the boot drop is $25,000. The holiday light parade is $15,000. The Christmas parade is $12,000, and ACR is $7,500. This is where we really understood why our partnership needs to happen and why we need to be working smarter instead of independently. And I think that you'll see that as we we haven't had the chance to work together. This is just our first conversation. But as we've been having our conversations, there's so much that we can really leverage, and we can really have our sponsorships go a long way in regards to that.
And we would just like to make note on those numbers. When you're looking at that $100,000 for the courthouse lighting, that is straight logistics costs. That is lights alone to light the courthouse. That's stringing the trees and putting the lights on the courthouse. That does not include any of the events that are associated with that. So that's just what it costs to light it up for that period of time. Same thing when we're talking about the Whiskey Row boot drop. That is their logistics cost and their advertising costs. So, you know, when you look at these numbers and we talk about growth and directions that we would like to see these events go, just note that these are the hard costs as of 2020, not with any additional features included.
The other thing I'd like to add for all of these events is that cost does not include any staffing or any of those things. Our organizations support those separately. That's our gift to this whole Arizona's Christmas City. So these dollars, they right now, two of the, I would say three of the funding sources go through our foundation, a 501c3. We partnered with the boot drop about a year ago. In the courthouse lighting has always gone under our 501c3 arm. And as you've heard, the Friends of the Jersey Lily, when they're fundraising, those dollars go directly to the operations, as MJ has mentioned. And this is just another indication of 80% of all the funding that we have goes towards the operations, and then 20% is supported. We've been receiving $30,000 since I started from the city for the courthouse lighting, and I believe that Matt receives a grant from TAC Grant for the boot drop, and I'm not sure if Acker receives anything. Yeah, so as you can see, I think this is one of the things as we all sit down as nonprofits is, as you can see, $160,000 to put these events on. And you never know what the year's going to look like. And COVID really kind of woke us up as to what could happen if our businesses couldn't support this, and how important this this whole campaign is for the area.
So I think we can all agree when you talk about how important the Arizona's Christmas City events are, both to our businesses and the community as a whole. When you look at 80% of that being shouldered by volunteers, that puts us on very tenuous ground. And we saw that in 2020, even with something as simple as we have volunteer groups that come out to assist us with putting the decor on the courthouse itself. And those are local, they're businesses. Well, in 2020, they were not allowed to provide volunteers for this service. So we then had to absorb those additional costs to hire staffing in order to get those things placed. So, 2020 really shook us, Sherry and I, as it did every business locally. But it really showed us how shaky the ground is under these events, under our current process.
I do want to say that we are grateful to the community, the 80% that have been supporting us, and we'll need that continued support. But I think that the source funding for this Arizona's Christmas City is so important. And, we're securing the funding right now. That's the other piece of this, is that we're always fundraising the same year as the event is going on. We actually literally don't know our full budget until after the Friends of the Jersey Lily, after we hear their fundraising. So it's an interesting place to be.
So as business professionals, you'll understand that when Sherry and I sit down and we sign a contract with our lighting contractor, we are signing to pay money that we don't know if we're going to have yet. So this causes, I'm getting gray hair. Like, this is not how you do business, correct? So we were really looking at how do we get ahead of this? How do we get where we are not fundraising within the same year that we are writing our contracts for? And it's also locked us into a certain contractor because they were willing to wait on that funding. So they come out, they do the work beginning in October, November, and then we pay them sometime towards the end of January. And that's based on those dollars being raised through these sponsorships and through the Jersey Lily auction, which we, Sherry and I cannot give enough kudos to Jersey Lily for what they do and what they've continued to do year over year. And they do it with a passion. They really love how important it is to this event, and they get that. They understand it. And even last year when volunteers were hesitant to be out and collecting, they gathered so many donations that auction just went on and on. Mr. Mayor, you'll remember we were there, and but they care about it so much. And we don't want it to sound like we don't appreciate those efforts. It's more the timing of the efforts as far as from a business and an economic perspective. We really can't continue to sign contracts, not knowing how many dollars are going to be in that fund at the end of the year. The other thing with this to keep in mind is that we are locked in now only to what we're currently doing. Because not knowing what that funding's going to look like, it doesn't give us an opportunity to add additional trees to the courthouse or, extend what's happening with the boot drop. We are locked in to what we already know we're capable of raising. And it's very consistent year over year. So as we carry that mantle of Arizona's Christmas City and we continue to own that title, we do need to be planning for how do we continue to adapt and how do we continue to grow this beloved event, this tradition in Prescott.
Hey, MJ. Councilman says she has a question.
Yeah, MJ.
Absolutely, Councilman.
It's great to have you guys here. So is what you're saying is you want this, I keep hearing one time, you want this $160,000 so that the money that you raise can go to next year's Christmas City event?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. See, if it allows us then to plan with money already in the bank rather than writing checks after the fact and hoping that our sponsorships go as they always have, or that we have the support of the community with Jersey Lily's auction as we always have.
So that'll continue. I mean, you intend for the Jersey Lily to keep doing what
Absolutely.
they're doing.
We are not looking to limit what we are doing ourselves. We will continue to go out and work with our local businesses. They enjoy being part of this. They enjoy sponsoring the Arizona's Christmas City events. And nothing was more telling than how gracious they were with us last year, knowing what their own situations were within their businesses. They still wrote those checks. They still continued to support this event. And we will still continue to do that, to go out and meet with our businesses and make sure that they are included with our community members, with Jersey Lily. So no, we are not looking to limit what we're already doing.
Yeah, it makes so much sense too for the businesses so that they're not getting hit, more than once. They know that they can write a check and it's going to help all of these different events and not worry like I can only give you so much because I got to give the next person that's coming some of my money as well. So that's good.
Yeah, thank you. And that's a great point. And the other point is that we have never marketed this as Arizona's Christmas City, even though we have the official title. And so now we have a logo, and now we're going to work with TAC and work with the committee to make sure that everyone knows that this is Arizona's Christmas City, and we're going to leverage that. And again, like what's already been said, not keep going to the same people 5 times over. Now we can go to them once with a cohesive package that is presented. And the other goal that we have by working with TAC is to make sure that we can bring people in when it's not busy, so that we can fill those non-busy days, during the week that we hear so often. And so what we want to do is bring people in during those slower times, and that would be the goal.
And that was probably the thing that was most attractive to some of the other groups who have joined with us under the committee, the Arizona Christmas City Committee, was being able to market a time period rather than one single event. And that way we are drawing people to visit the courthouse, on a Wednesday or a Thursday afternoon. And it doesn't have to just be Acronite or the lighting itself. This allows us to continue to bring that business in for that entire 6-week period rather than just those 4 specific nights.
And the other thing that I'd like to add is that we are committed to keeping this a tradition. We want this to be our history that is kept the same. So that's another thing that we're all talking about, is this is important to us to be Arizona's Christmas City, and we're looking to make sure that that part of the tradition stays. So our residents don't have to worry about, us becoming a Vegas Strip or something like that. We want to make sure, and we've had many committee meetings to talk about that we want this to be the way that Prescott wants it to be. And we're committed to that. And I think we can go to the next thing.
So we've talked about the collaboration. We've talked about our incentive for coming before you today. So our ask is for a one-time sponsorship of $160K, which would cover all of the costs for 1 year as they are produced now. Anything that we are able to raise over that would be where we would, there's been a lot of talk about they're going to grow it, they're going to do these things. And we did mention that. We would like to add additional trees at the courthouse, especially on that south end. And that's probably one of the critiques I get the most is, can you add in more trees? Absolutely, we would love to add in more trees, but we've got to have that financial backing to do those sorts of things. So we're here humbly before you today, asking for you to support TAC's recommendation of sponsorship for 1 year of $160K. At this time, if you have any questions, we would be happy to answer them.
Yep, very good. Great presentation. Thank you guys for being here and for putting all this together. Questions, comments from the council? We'll go to Councilman Tenney.
So one of my privileges as being part of the city council is to I guess, act as the City Council liaison to the Tourist Advisory Committee, the TAC that's been referred to. We've had some great conversations and some presentations about a vision for continuing, obviously, the traditions that we've got as Arizona's Christmas City, and again, making it instead of 3 or 4 individual events, kind of a time frame that benefits the city, which I'm pretty excited about. So I'm really intrigued to hear the presentation today and the forethought that's being given to the financial piece of not trying to fundraise same year and get with people and give you some flexibility that way. So that's terrific. The other piece, I don't remember if this came up in our meetings, and you may know off the top of your head, or it may be something for another time, but 160,000 seems like a lot of money on the one hand, but the impact, I wonder if there's an estimated impact that being Arizona's Christmas City and having these events has on our community in terms of tax dollars and what that might look like. I'm sure it's very difficult to estimate, if these all went away, how dead Prescott would be, so to speak, in December, et cetera. But maybe you can speak to that just briefly.
I can speak to it in regards to, I actually just received some numbers from the tourism office in regards to that time frame for 2019 and then also for 2020. And we roughly bring in about 900,000 people during that time from November to Martin Luther King. And almost 300,000 of those folks are spending money in our community. What we know is that we have about 48,000 that come in for one night, on the night that we turn on the switch. 48,000 come into town for that. And this is for the district, the shopping district area. So we know that the folks are in that district. We're also going to be getting numbers for the border to border, all of Prescott, of how that supports it. And then for 2020, our numbers were a little bit lower. They were right around 600,000, as you can imagine, because of COVID. And then also the shopping was right around the same, just a little, about 50,000 short of what it was in 2019. People were still spending money, which is good for us. And I think your sales tax revenue has showcased that as well. Prescott became a place for people to come during COVID, and some of them came back. So that was nice. And that's always a goal. But, and also we showed in 2020 that even though we had to cancel, if you remember last minute, we had to cancel all of these holiday events, we still had 22,000 people show up that evening. And we had around 15,000. Acker is the second largest number attractor, and then 29,000 for the boot drop. So you can see Acker was at 40,000. So those are the numbers, and a lot of folks coming into the market.
Determines that we do want to invest in this. Our return on investment is not only quality of life for our citizens, but there's really a financial impact that goes well beyond what we would be. The return on investment is fantastic.
Yeah, and I do remember TAC was concerned. 160 is really quite low, but I mean, that's what we've been working with. So,
sure. Councilman Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I can certainly understand the business necessity of being able to have funds available to sign contracts and pay contractors without the hope that the finances are going to show up after the fact. That's a difficult thing to run a business on. So those are understandable. Possibly providing this kind of a one-time front load to be able to put that assurance in effect is understandable, and I'm assuming then that you would then be able to escrow those funds at the end of the season to be able to have the same amount of funds to be able to sign contracts and assure your contractors that they would be paid and not have to, again, hope that things work out. So is that my understanding?
Yes, that's correct. And as we mentioned, we are not going to sit on our laurels. We will still be doing the same fundraising we've already started. We added an additional fundraising element this year of the raffle of a car. Finley donated a vehicle, and we were able to raise some funds from that. So we are already looking at other ways to supplement, for coming years. But getting ahead of that total amount is where we've struggled.
Well, I do have concerns that, we have such great traditions here, And I want to make sure that our volunteers and the people who make those donations and feel that they're connected with the event. It really drives a long-term feeling of participation.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you get into these centralized, larger marketing plans, sometimes you lose that connection. And also there are people that particularly like Akronite because of its focus on music and youth and the development of that, sometimes is different than somebody who wants to be out there to watch the boot drop at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes a different interest group, if I might describe it that way. So my concern is making sure that we maintain that connection with donors and individuals, and they're feeling like, you know, I bought a big light bulb at Jersey Lilies, and, you know, I'm proud of that, right? And maybe next year I can give even a little bit more because I want to feel that I was part of that whole event. And sometimes when you get these broader marketing plans, there's a feeling of, well, I don't have to do that. That's being taken care of by this organization. That's a concern for me. So if we can see this as a one-time change in how you fund and fundraise, but it's not a precedent for future expectations, and that any of the additional programs or components that you're looking for, like maybe adding another 10 or 20 trees, maybe sometimes we can move a little bit of the crowd around the sides instead of just in the front of the courthouse. But, you know, the events are just so special that sometimes I'm concerned about altering them because it's been such a long-term success. So I think maybe an initial one-time support for this is justified, as long as we don't hear a year or 2 years from now saying, well, we need more because we have extra plans. So it's kind of a balance between supporting tradition and making sure that the community stays connected with each one of these events that they may have particular support for, but may not necessarily want to support the other one because they're dealing with a different customer base or constituent base. So I think it's probably worth using this as a pilot project and see how well it plays out.
You know, Sherry and I are both very cognizant of the importance of the tradition. We recognize that it's attractive because we are a small town and it feels very traditional Christmas when people come here. So any of our plans steer towards that goal of maintaining that small town Christmas, and even being able to say the word Christmas. You know, we recognize that in today's day and age that is attractive to the people who come here to visit and to partake. And we do feel like organizing this and fundraising together will actually allow some businesses who maybe felt like they couldn't participate before because maybe they couldn't write a big enough check or they didn't feel like it would matter. The way that we can structure those levels of sponsorship, I think will actually open it up to some new people who wanted to feel part of it, to have that ownership. And we certainly don't want to take away from the community's ownership of these events. It is incredible what the community and the volunteers have done for decades. It's really a beautiful thing how supported this event is, these various events, and how excited people get to do it. We see that with Jersey Lily. Jersey Lily this year has been at all of the shows at the plaza already selling bulbs because they wanted to get ahead of it. They recognized last year how fragile some pieces of their fundraising could be. And so we've worked with them to get them, you know, some other opportunities to start it sooner. So there's not that stress on them, as we get to the end of the year. But we certainly don't want this request to take away from the community's ownership of these events.
Well, that's good. And next year we'll be able to measure how effective that plan is and make sure that we don't have a dilution of effort. So I think it has a pretty solid justification. Thank you.
Councilman Sishka.
Thanks, Mayor. I saw something new on there. It looked like Christmas market. So could you tell us about Christmas market?
I can. Actually, where I came from, we used to have a Kringle market. It's a German market. And actually, when I started working here, I'm working with Margot Christensen, and she's part of the Sister City. She has been talking about that as well. We're looking at possibilities of bringing in another event that would help with the fundraising efforts for Arizona's Christmas City. And these types of markets are very popular and fun, and they would tie in really nicely on a time frame that isn't already taken with some other events. So we're just taking a look at that right now. That's nothing that is official. It's just ideas, dreaming, if you will.
And where would that be? Have you thought about where it might be?
All kinds of places.
Oh, that's good. That really nails it down.
Somewhere in the downtown area.
The incentive with that one in particular is to fill those midweek days. Because we've got some Friday events, we've got our Saturday events, but we really want to extend those groups who are coming into town, or even our locals, to give them a reason to come downtown on Monday through Thursday, and see us. So when we're talking about things like the Kringle Market or ice skating or things like those are things that would be open for the duration, or not the Kringle Market, but, for an extended period of time to give people another reason to come and visit us.
And again, just to remind you, those events aren't, those are things they're thinking about adding future, so that they can expand upon it as we grow. So nothing that would be added this year.
Thank you. Any questions, other questions, comments from the council? Any public comment?
No, Mayor.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. All right. So let's move on to item C, please.
Approval of fiscal year 22 Tourism Advisory Committee and Prescott Arts and Humanities Council grants in the amount of $79,576.
Mayor and Council, John Heine with the Tourism Office, Community Outreach Manager. Every year we come before you with the series of approvals for the TAC and PAC grants, and this was a good day. We kind of had some synergy with the previous requests, so we do have some TAC members that are here in the audience today. But as you know, in the budget process, you approve the tourism budget in its entirety. The money that we're talking about today has already been approved. What we're doing today is just putting the detail on it and providing you with a report on the allocation. So each year, the Tourism Advisory Committee reviews and awards grants for locally based nonprofits, organizations to host events in Prescott throughout the year. The grants are designed to assist the organizations with marketing efforts specifically that bring visitors to Prescott in particular. And of course, the goal always with bed tax dollars is to create overnight stays. The bed tax does come from the hotel tax specifically, and the state enabling legislation tells us that we are supposed to use the majority of that money for inviting people to come back and spend more money in our hotel rooms. And that's where the bed tax comes from. That's the genesis of it. So that's always important. We always emphasize that in the grant making process. This year, a total of 29 organizations will receive just over $79,500 for their events, which take place between July 1st of this year going through June 30 of 2022. And again, as we mentioned, this was approved. The total amount was approved in the FY22 budget. I think we have TAC and PAC. They're two different grant-making processes. They're similar, but we have a different committee that do that. You may recall about 4 or 5 years ago, the Tourism Office took over the grant-making process for the Prescott Area Arts and Humanities Council. We were providing the funding, but we also, in this last few years, have provided the grant-making process. So we have TAC and PAC I think just show of hands, some recipients for the grant. No manual back there. So great. So we have some recipients here for these funds. So just seeking your approval of this amount. There are spreadsheets in your packet listing and detailing. And if you have any questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, John, I'm seeing on here, average score, then requested amount, and grant amount, and then final award, and they're all different.
Yes, sir.
So can you tell
Absolutely.
me about that?
So we have a dedicated budget, total budget for TAC and one for PAC. We can't go over that amount. You might take a look at the total amount. We're just under 80,000, which is the total. We go through the scoring process that gives each applicant a score. The applicant requested a certain amount. We apply that score to the amount, and they have an award amount. What we have to do is what I call a sliding scale so that we stay under the budget. In other words, if all of these awards were awarded at the full amount that they were scored, we'd be well over the 80,000 total budget. So we've had to do that. That's really a function of the fact that we have so many applicants every year and so many great programs that get awarded. But we've had to apply the sliding scale, I think, for the last 3 out of 4 years. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions, comments from the council? Councilman Tinney.
Yeah, once again, I work with this organization in my role as a city councilman. I really appreciate the process that John has led us through to take a look at these and scores and whatnot. And once again, it's an investment in our community, both in terms of quality of life and return our investment. So it's kind of whatever the opposite of a vicious cycle is, it's a positive thing that leads to something else positive. So we put money into these organizations, which bring money into the community, which makes the bed tax money is available, which helps us to put it back into organizations. It's just a real positive synergy for our city. So I really appreciate it on both of those levels. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from the council? Public comment?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve the recommended FY22 TAC grants.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Please vote. Councilmember Russing?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Let's go to item D, please.
Adoption of ordinance number 2021-1772, an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending the zoning of certain property within the City of Prescott, generally located west of Side Road and south of SR 89A, not 98A, from single family 9 SF9 to industrial light IL.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon. This is a request for rezoning for a piece of property that is in the vicinity of the airport. And I do have a little bit of history for you before I show you a map. The area was initially annexed into the city along with much of the area south and east of the airport way back in 1963 when I was a wee lad at the time. The original zoning with that annexation was a mix of commercial and residential. The commercial was a very heavy commercial. It was on the western half of the annexation area. In 2003, when the city adopted and implemented its land development code, that designation of very heavy commercial turned into light industrial, and the area is a light industrial area now. In 2005, most of the residents of the area most of the property owners of the area who own residential property requested the properties be rezoned to industrial to match the western half of the property. And in fact, we did that. The vast majority of that area is industrial light as it was planned for in the city's general plan and envisioned in the airport specific area plan because of the proximity to the runway and overflights. 3 property owners held out and wanted to retain their single-family zoning, and council allowed that zoning around them effectively. The property owner at the very smallest and most southern piece of that residential property has now requested it be rezoned to industrial light to match the others, to allow for development in a more industrial manner rather than a residential. This property is vacant, unlike the other 2 residential properties, so it would preclude a future residential home in an area where we have overflights and surrounded by industrial uses, which would make it incompatible. Very straightforward. Our Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommend in favor, and staff supports this to make it compatible with the surrounding zoning. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, George. Questions, comments from the council?
Well, only Mayor, that this is a real easy one.
I don't get used to it.
It's almost like spot zoning that you would never want to do, but it was done. So now being able to actually increase it from a single family into industrial light makes so much sense, and that's one of the few things within our purview that we can upgrade, but we can't downgrade. So yeah, this is an easy one. Thanks.
Anything else from the council? Public comment?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move adopt ordinance number 2021-1772.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Please vote. Councilmember Rusing?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Very good. Thank you, George. Let's move on to item E, please.
Approval of city contract number 2022-013 with Stanley Group for the design of the Zone 52 water main extension project.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Eric Bay with Public Works. The first item that I have for you today is going to be approval for a design and engineering services contract for a much-needed water main extension. And this water main extension was first identified by our model years ago, and it's a great efficiency project for city water operations, so we're super excited to see it move forward. Let me show you the alignment. So this extension is going to be a 12-inch water main. It's going to start at the intersection of Pioneer Parkway and Williamson Valley Road, where we have existing water system. It's going to extend north to more or less the southwest corner of the Longview subdivision, and then east along the existing WAPA electrical easement, and terminate at our existing Longview booster pump station site right there at the end of the blue line. And I mentioned this was a good efficiency project, and I say that for a few different reasons. Right now, the Longview subdivision is kind of at the corner of our system, and it's at a dead end, which means there's only one line going into that subdivision. So this provides a second feed to that area, which gives us a little flexibility as far as reliability and redundancy. Second, this new feed is coming from a higher pressure zone. So when we make this connection, we will be able to abandon the existing booster station and the tank that are in the Longview subdivision, which is a big operational cost savings to operations. And then finally, the blue line, the existing system, is Zone 52, which floats off of our Northwest Regional tank. And we have quite a bit of capacity in this tank, so adding another subdivision there allows water operations to more effectively utilize that storage capacity. So for this project, city staff direct selected Stanley Group off of qualifications that they recently submitted off of our recent professional services on-call solicitation. City staff has worked with Stanley before and their project manager, and they're happy to be undertaking this project and working with the city again. We've negotiated a scope and fee, and we're ready to hit the ground running. So with that, I'll answer any questions about this project.
Thank you, Eric. Questions, comments from the council? Councilman Good?
Eric, I always applaud you when you get super excited about a water main extension. You're obviously in the right job. So you're saying that you will have a number of financial benefits for this, especially with the abandonment of some of the inefficient components. So what's the analysis of the cost benefit versus the cost of doing this and the savings that you're going to be able to see?
So I don't have a hard number for long-term return on investment, but the savings will continue on a monthly basis. From every electrical bill that we don't need to pay, to every site visit that our operation crews don't need to make to a booster station, to replacement of pumps, to replacement of a hydro tank, to replacement coating of a tank. All of these things start to add up over the years. I could put the numbers pencil to paper to come up with a more definitive ROI, but City of Prescott, our water system, we're not going anywhere. So having these continuous savings is something that we're always trying to achieve.
Well, okay. I mean, I would like to know what the investment is and what the payoff expectation is. And, you know, that's not a small amount of dollars. And I think it's going to be a necessary extension of water service into Longview. And that's, you know, Longview's always been this island out there that, you know, at one time, well, how it was approved and why, that's historical. But they are residents of the city, and they need to have equivalent services. So I think it's appropriate.
Councilmember Good, we can get you that information. Well, obviously, don't have it today, but we can get it for you, or at least ballpark it for you.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is Councilmember Kathy Rusing.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the future, will this water main be used to serve the Stringfield Ranch development?
Stringfield Ranch, being located directly to the west, would likely tap into one or more locations of this water line at some point when they do develop.
And will they be paying for any of this infrastructure?
The infrastructure on this contract right here doesn't go to support Stringfield Ranch. They will be paying for all the infrastructure that they will put in to support their development.
Thank you.
Anything else from the council? Public comments?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2022-013.
Second.
Motion and second. Please vote. Councilmember Rusing?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
All right. Let's move on to item F, please.
Approval of city contract number 2017-024A6, an amendment to city contract number 2017-024 with Van Environmental LLC for design build pre-construction services for the Chino Production Well Rehabilitation Program Production Well number 3.
Good afternoon again. I'm Beck. This item, next step in the city's longstanding well rehabilitation program. And the amendment that you're approving today is for the design and engineering services associated with Chino Well number 3 rehabilitation. So the well rehabilitation program was originally approved in 2017. And since then, the city and our design build team have been designing and replacing aging at the end of their useful service life, well equipment, buildings, and other site appurtenances. So this is going to be the third well site that we are going to rehabilitate under this program. We're using the exact same team. We have the Fan Environmental, Dibble Engineering, design build team on board, and they went through the process on the first well site, Chino Well 5, and the second well site, Chino Well 4. So we're very pleased with the way that this program has moved forward with the design build approach. City staff selected this design build team in 2017 using a competitive qualification submittal, and they happened to come out on top. It's been great to work with them. This is the 6th amendment to the original contract. And the 7th amendment I will be coming to council with shortly. That will be once the GMP is developed off the plan set and we're ready to construct the rehabilitation. After that, city staff is going to move on to well number 2 and then well number 1 to complete the well rehabilitation program as time and budget allow. With that, I'll answer any questions. Oh, also, I do have a photo of the last rehabilitation we did. This is the inside of our Chino Well number 4. Also, the cover photo for this year's Consumer Confidence Report. If you haven't read it, highly recommend picking it up. It highlights all the testing that we do and other system features, and it's a great read.
Keep you awake at night?
Absolutely.
Questions, comments from the council?
Well, it is a beautiful photo, isn't it?
Yes, this is Councilmember Rusing. I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
For Eric. Thank you. I would just like to ask what the total cost of this project will be.
Yes, absolutely. The preliminary engineer's estimate of probable cost is about $2.5 million for this site.
Thank you.
Anything else from the council? Public comment?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, move to approve city contract number 2017-024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Councilmember Rusing?
Councilmember?
Yes.
Okay. Passes 6-0.
Okay. Let's move on to item G, please.
Approval of city contract number 2022-025 with Fan Contracting for the Sunrise Boulevard Paving and Drainage Improvement Project.
Afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Craig Dossett, Public Works. This item I bring before you today is to consider a construction contract with Fan Contracting for the Sunrise Boulevard Paving and Drainage Improvements Project. I know sometimes we wonder, why do we need drainage improvements? Maybe not so much today. Sunrise Boulevard, within the limits of this project, were built between over the time frames between 1980 and the 1990s. So it's getting to be, it's 20 plus to 30 plus years old now. So the existing pavement is very poor condition, and has met the end of its useful life. From our pavement management program, the average PCI in here, pavement condition index, is a 38, which is a poor. The index goes from 0 to 100. 100 is brand new. So that gives you an idea that it is very poor condition. The existing pavement section varies between 1.5 inches of pavement to 3 inches of pavement. The base underneath it varies from 2.5 to 8 inches. So the design brought all that into context in order to solve those very weak areas, and will create a standard pavement section through it to maintain and provide service it needs to. It also will address the substandard drainage in the areas here. On the one hand, to address those and solve those, but not go overboard with a mega drainage system. So this will meet the requirements and the needs of drainage in the area and solve that as well. Project was designed and put out to bid, where we received 4 bids. Public Works is recommending the low bid with Fan Contracting at $1,463,102. The engineer's estimate was $1,729,134.70. So we've received written confirmation and bid verification from Fan Contracting for that. Licenses were checked in there. And the city standard contract will be utilized for the project. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions, comments from the council?
Good.
Public comment?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, move to approve city contract number 2022-025.
Second. Motion and second. Please vote. Councilmember Rusing?
Yes.
Councilman Sushka, can you vote, please? Thank you. Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. All right, let's move on to item H, please.
Approval of city contract number 2022-024 with Asphalt Paving and Supply, Inc. for construction of the Hokagon Waterline Improvements Project, and approval of city contract number 2021-001A1, an amendment to city contract number 2021-001 with Civil Tech Engineering for post-design services.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, once again. The last item that I have for you today is a construction contract for some minor water system improvements and relocations within the Hokagon neighborhood, which is just west of Williamson Valley Road, and a small post-design and engineering services contract for the same. This project, candidly, is not as exciting as the first two that I just spoke about, but it's very important that we get it done, and I'll tell you why. The Hokagon subdivision, while on city water service, it's a county subdivision with county right-of-ways, and the county is planning a large drainage project throughout the subdivision. And this is important to note because when we're outside of city limits, the city and our water mains are effectively third-party utilities. And when designing this project, the county did a pretty good job of designing around us as to not interrupt our water mains as well as they could, but there were some areas of conflict. So it's the city's obligation as the third-party utility provider per se in the area to move our utilities in advance of the county project, just as other utilities would do in our right-of-ways with our projects. So we bid this project throughout July. We received 3 bids, with the apparent low bidder being Asphalt Paving and Supply. The city staff verified bonding and confirmed their bid. We've worked with this contractor before, so we're familiar with the workmanship, and we're recommending award at this time. With that, I'll take any questions.
Questions or comments from the council? Councilman Blair?
Can we put sewer lines in the same ditch?
Absolutely not.
Oh, I thought maybe that was a good way to get them off the septic tank systems. So.
The water system relocations here are not subdivision wide. It's very localized. What we're doing is plugging in a few hydrants, and that will allow us locations to provide fly lines for when we do the water main relocation. And candidly, it's really only about 150 feet of relocation that was necessary or in the way of the storm drain.
Okay, thank you. I just thought I'd ask.
Councilman Good?
So can you describe the county's project here and why they decided to work on it at this time?
I can in a limited basis. All I really know is what I've heard from the county. First and foremost, they have been great partners with this project. They've provided us their plans up front. They've allowed us to comment on them. And they've been very sensitive to knowing that it takes quite an effort to move a water main, especially a water main in this subdivision where a lot of the subdivision is single feed, and quite a bit of the subdivision material is asbestos cement, which is traditionally a difficult material to work with and replace. So I don't know all the drivers behind why they're doing this project, but I can tell you that it does include some 36, 48-inch, and maybe even larger storm drain pipes within the right-of-ways, and it's definitely aimed at reducing flooding within the subdivision. If it was a city project, I'd be able to speak to it a little bit more, but that's kind of my limited knowledge of what they're doing and why.
Well, I know this is very close to the development area, Stringfield Ranch, and the stormwater retention basin that currently exists in the State Land Trust parcel. But one of the several objections that I made to the Stringfield Ranch proposal was the fact that the engineering for stormwater runoff was going to be in a series of phases rather than a comprehensive plan for phases 1, 2, and 3. So that doesn't necessarily mean that phase 1 will work with the phases 2 and 3 rather than having them require to have a overall design. And clearly, I think this potentially could impact in this particular area. So the investment that the city is making for this particular project, would that have any negative impact if some of these future inadequate stormwater runoff designs could impact our investment here?
So from what I understand, the drainage that's being accommodated by this county project in Hokagon is primarily picking off flows that are coming in from the west, not coming in from Stringfield Ranch. In regards to the city water system, the investment that we're making here is very localized within the subdivision. It's not subdivision wide, and it's just to avoid some of the conflicts with the storm drain. The hydrant additions are going to allow us to do this relocation, because without them, a very large portion of the subdivision would be without water service for an extended period of time, and that's not something that we can accept.
All right, as long as we don't have to find out that a couple of years from now we have to redesign the whole thing because of some poor designs in Stringfield. So if it's just a localized requirement in this one particular part of Waukegan, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. This project borders Stringfield Ranch, and in the future, are they going to be tapping into this water main also?
The preliminary water plan that I've seen for Stringfield Ranch does show a branch connecting into a main that is located within the Waukegan subdivision, but that is in a different location of the subdivision than this project.
Okay, and then going back to the item E, is it possible if I could ask how many linear feet of water main are we installing along Williamson Valley Road, and what the total cost of that project is going to be? We're spending about $200,000 for the design, and I was just wondering what the total cost was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. The design is going to be about 5,000 linear feet, but the design costs are not limited to just the waterline design. They also include the abandonment of the pump station, the abandonment of the tank, regulatory submittals, and everything that goes with the project, including geotechnical, potholing, surveying, lead detection, and others.
Okay, and I would just like to say for the record that Stringfield Ranch is outside of our general plan area, and it is also outside of our water service area. Thank you.
Other questions, comments from the council? Public comment?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2022-024.
Second. Motion and a second. Please vote. Councilmember Rusing?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
And Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2021-001A1.
Second. Motion and second. Please vote. Councilmember Rusing?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Last item, I.
Approval of payment of fiscal year 22 Upper Verde River Watershed Protection Coalition membership dues in the amount of $60,000.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Leslie Grazer with Public Works. I'm going to look for a file quickly.
Did we put in there a kayak for me? It's for me. Isn't that the way the world works? Give me a bicycle too.
Well, it looks like the file I added today was taken back off. Okay. No, I placed a file on this afternoon and it's not there. Okay, on with the show. So I had brought, does this element work here? It's okay. Okay. Thank you for waiting for this last item, and I'll move it quickly. Most of the information that you need to know is within the memo itself. The question that generally comes up is, what does this group usually do? Why are we spending this kind of money? And so I had an item for you today that we could open up and look at. And what we were going to look at was the Watershed Restoration and Management Plan. That's what guides this group as to how it spends its monies. So further, I have a leverage block that I had available. And leverage is what the different partners can bring to the table. As an example, the City of Prescott has been able to leverage about $100,000. If we look at Town of Prescott Valley, about 2.4. And a lot of that comes from Mr. Munderloh over at Prescott Valley, does a lot of the contract work back and forth, the filings that we have to do. He leads our meetings. He gets with the stakeholders, things of that nature. Then this group, which is very different from your other membership, they work project-based. So they have pulled in about $7.6 million in grants, and the monies that you provide through our membership to this group is what helps as in-kind or matching monies, or however you want to look at that. What they're working on now is this ADWR grant for rainwater harvesting, and I believe you've had a conversation about this recently. We definitely had it at the coalition itself, here at the Water Advisory Committee. So that's about $6,500 that's been awarded. All parties, including the city, are offering in kind through city engineering, through other staff members at the city to make this project go. And where it's moving to is stormwater management strategies. So that's another element of this watershed management plan, which you can kind of think of as basically watershed health. It's no different than our friends down south, SRP, who work on what's called the forefry to make sure the forests stay healthy so that we have good recharge and protect the watershed, basically. So as you know, Councilman Blair sits on the board, and if there's anything I can offer,
I think it's important.
You can offer.
I just think it's important that this council knows that these projects are centered around a lot of different areas. And the one we had a presentation on the other day was at the rodeo grounds, where we're taking the water off of the rodeo buildings and diverting that water into catchment basins, which cleanses the ground of the rodeo ground, and in different silt catchment basins that keeps the sediment out of our system and allows that water to be purified before it gets back into the creek and ends up in Willow Lake. So all these projects are very specific in nature, but very necessary to keep helping us clean the lakes up one drop at a time. Thank you, Leslie.
Any other questions, comments from the council? Councilman Good?
Thank you. And I think it's important that the community at large understands that some of these related organizations get very little publicity, but the work that they do, not only for the benefit of the city, but for the broader community, is a very modest investment for a very, very good return. So I think it's important that we continue to support these programs and coalitions, so that we can have a broader understanding of how best to manage our resources, our water runoff, stormwater impacts, etc. And I wish there was a better understanding of community at large, how valuable these programs are. So I certainly support it.
Anything else from the council? Public comment?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve payment of the FY22 Upper Verde River Watershed Protection Coalition. Wow, that's a... I need to take a breath. Membership dues.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Councilmember Rusing?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Very good. Thank you, Leslie. Our quote comes from Helen Keller today. Keep your face to the sunshine, and you cannot see a shadow. This meeting is adjourned.